Hello and welcome to CIO News. I am Khushbu Soni, your host for the broadcast and editor chief at CIO News. This is our exclusive fireside chat powered by Goto. It is a recorded session and will be available on our website, that is cionews.co.in, and our CIO News LinkedIn handle. I'm very excited to invite our guest for today. We have Satish Subramanian, the Vice President Information Technology at Infinix. Satish has a rich experience of 25 years working for various organizations such as HCL Infosystem, IBM, TCS, Infosys, and many more. Satish has been, driving delivery of programs in 24 by 7 environment from multiple delivery centers, transition and transformation projects across US, UK, and Europe, and has an in-depth familiarity with offshoring, outsourcing, system integration, and business development. Satish has the ability to develop high performance teams, implement processes, strategies, and achieve targets and adapt the governance, risk identification, and compliance management as per various standards and creation and implementation of service assurance framework and service improvement initiatives. Satish, it is an absolute pleasure to have you today, and we're really looking forward to drive this discussion with you.
Thank you, Khushbu, and it's my pleasure to be part of this conversation too.
Fantastic. I'm also accompanied by Triveni Rabindraraj, the India sales head from Goto. Triveni has 21 plus years of experience across business development, strategic alliance, people management. Triveni has worked for various brands such as Wipro, Dun& Bradstreet, City, and many more. Triveni, pleasure to have you again.
Thanks, Khushbu.
Um, Great. So I wanted to begin our discussion. We're putting across first question to you, Satish. Uh, with the dynamic environment that we're working in, how has the working changed for Infinix post COVID? Is it work from home or hybrid? If you can give us a little more insight in how has your role evolved, and what does your typical day look like now post COVID?
Absolutely. So, Khushbu, first of all, thank you again for inviting me to this panel. My view, COVID, I think it's really transformed the entire world, right? I've been seeing a lot of WhatsApp messages saying that what has really driven the digital transformation, then the answer is COVID, right? So,
Right.
yes, until COVID, right? All the IT/ITS organizations would have never even imagined can we really work from home because we have been driven with a lot of controls like be it HIPAA for PHI or PSI for payment card related. So all of these controls would never want the data to be taken outside your office. And typically, Infinix is more of a healthcare services provider, and it was really a big jolt when on March 23rd the announcement was made saying that it's just going to be we are going to have a complete lockdown that's going to be imposed, right? So everybody, because again, it's not only from a data security perspective, it's more from an availability of systems perspective also, because IT and ITES, or typically ITES, the economy of scale is what really works, because you actually have the operations and shift a particular user would be using. uh, I mean, the system will be shared across three members for a 24 bar 7 shift operation. So the organization also would be able to really get their ROI, because the number of assets that you actually have would be much lesser. Like if you have 1,500 employees, I would have only about 600, 700 assets because rest all would be working in shifts. So the immediate jolt was, how do I really make the business run? How can I really get all the assets that are required for my employees? I need to enable my employees to work from home. So it's not only about availability of systems, it's about the connectivity, the security, because the PHA information got to be highly secure. So how do I really manage that? So initial days was really, really chaotic, you just go and grab whatever is available to make the business run, right? So now with the post COVID, like coming back to your question, after COVID, well, we're still in the midst of it. We don't know whether it is endemic or we are still going to, it's a pause, comma, or a full stop. We still don't know that. But a lot of businesses or internally we've started thinking on, should we really get the business back to office, or should that be a hybrid approach, or should be a work from home, right? So there've been a lot of deliberations going on, and at some point of time, you need to really put your stick on the sand and say, "Hey, this is how it's going to work." Because it's very difficult until in 2021, if you were looking at like every 3 months, you would really have a lockdown imposed, and then you'll be calling off lockdown imposed, and be calling off, and especially with SEZ norms where they say that you are allowed only for a particular duration, let's say until the last communication that we had was by March is when you have the allowance of employees to work outside, and now that's getting extended, let's say till June, and now it's further until further communication. Right? So those are all the moving factors that really influence the thought process for a business. Because can you really have the systems procured and have work from home options, or do you really need to plan for the systems to come back to office? So it's always been a dilemma. Internally, we have taken a short call saying that we'll have a hybrid approach wherein, to an extent, like wherever the businesses that could deliver from home, we will not really touch them for now. And wherever the data security is of utmost importance, yeah, we should probably have them back to office. At the same time, can we really build our applications and tools that could really secure the data so that the business does not get impacted even if there is a lockdown imposed? So that is the uh, frame that we are currently working on, so that we just wanted to be prepared for the future, at the same time not compromise on the current business ask.
Right, right. Absolutely. And I think, like you said, hybrid is here to stay, right? So we have seen that post-COVID, employees demand hybrid working kind of a culture. So you did mention about the technologies and tools that you have looked forward, or the aspects of security that you've considered, to do a continuity of hybrid working. On the aspect of IT help desk, so is your IT help desk fully empowered to provide fast and efficient support for the current flexible way of working?
Oh yes, the challenge is until again you have this BC and AD. Now we start talking IT post-COVID and pre-COVID, right? So
Yeah,
until pre-COVID eras, like you have the need that all the tools, I mean, since all the systems are within the office premises, I am okay from a management perspective because all the boxes are accessible within my network, within my own infrastructure at any point of time. So it's easier. But come
right.
COVID, all the systems are outside of office. So I need to really scale up for that as well, so that I can provide support for users who are at home as well, right? So, yes, we do have tools, but it so happened that the lot of tools that we have invested early in the pre-COVID era still continue to exist. At the same time, we do have additional tools that will help us to manage the post-COVID era requirements as well. So it is kind of scattered. You have multiple tools, so managing that itself is becoming a bit tougher. You really need to have a tool that would be a manager of managers, which doesn't
Correct.
really make sense. So we should probably look at something that is more consolidated, and that could really help me manage everything in one go. So we are actually moving towards that, but that needs some time before we could really, because the investment made is investment made. You need to really get the ROI for that before you can really look at something more. So that's where we stand.
Very true, very true. I think consolidation is one of the key that a lot of technology leaders are now focusing upon as well. Triveni, if you can share, you've been interacting with a lot of technology leaders. How have you seen, what should be the top priorities when considering these remote support solutions?
Yeah. So I think one thing that Satish mentioned, right, that completely resonates specifically with the people in the technology sales is that March 23rd was no less than a historic day for, I mean, in a, not in a, obviously it was
Yeah,
not in a very positive way, but at least from an industry perspective for us, it sort of was no less than a historic day, right? Because it completely changed the way we work, not one section, not one community, not one industry, but the whole world, right?
yeah,
So that was a huge shift. And whatever has come out of it is completely powered by it, right? So right, I think the digital transformation, like some analysts say that it's almost gone ahead by 10 years, right? Because of COVID,
true.
the the embracement of cloud, or appreciation of cloud, and software as the SaaS products have completely gone up because the companies have realized how easy it is to embrace cloud, because then the transition does not take, the scalability is pretty easy. So I think these two have really sort of like been like an eye opener for
Right.
majority of the industries. Obviously people in the healthcare and essential services still had to go, but I think they were also not completely in office, right? So there also we had the frontline workers were out there, but the administrative staff was still working out of home, right? So having seen that for the last 2 years, now we are kind of, what we are seeing is that, again, like Satish mentioned, hybrid is the way to go. I think that is the trend that we are seeing. In fact, one of the research is done by Gartner says that 8 out of 10 people will refuse a job if we do not offer the hybrid option. That's become a norm, obviously, because employees are used to getting the best of both worlds. In
Yeah,
fact, I was talking to a couple of my customers in from the IT sector who are actually struggling to bring their employees back 5 days. So I think 5 days a week in office is now a dream. I don't think anybody would want to. Also, I think because companies also have realized the flexibility is really the mantra going forward. So
true.
having said that, right, that puts a lot of pressure on people like Satish and teams, because everything is going to be dependent on technology. Right now, suddenly the IT teams internally to organizations have really become extremely critical, because the business continuity, forget the business continuity, even the business operations will not
Yeah,
function properly if the IT tools or if the people are not enabled to do so, right?
yeah,
Even it could be as basic as their laptops or tablets or the printers, etc. So I think that has put a lot of pressure on the IT teams, which is why a lot of companies, like Satish mentioned, are looking at consolidation, because now suddenly from managing 10 apps, it's probably gone to close to 100 apps, right? It's gone up to 10x.
yeah,
So that's definitely putting a lot of pressure, right? So we coming from the remote support world, so one thing that Goto has always been in this business, not only so I normally say we are not pandemic babies, we are not pandemic brands. We've been in this industry from 2003. So we have been working with companies to empower, remote working, but we have seen 178% jump in adoption of that remote working now, right? So if you ask for us, the last 2 years were, I would say, probably the golden years from a business perspective, right? Akshay sitting there, he's bought some super bike, and also that's the kind of business we've done, right? Not only us, anybody in the industry that we are operating.
correct.
So, a couple of things specifically. Now, I'll just branch into what we specialize in, which is remote support tools. So, that has become earlier, it was like a good to have product, but now it's completely become a must have product, right?
Yes.
Because earlier we had the luxury of our IT team sitting in the same building. You have an issue, your IT person comes running to your floor, helps you out. But today we don't have that. Probably, your technicians also are working out of home, or you have multi locations, or people obviously, being hybrid, right? So the requirement for remote support tools have gone up completely, right? I'm not even talking about the meeting tools. That's like a norm, right? That has to be there. That's like as good as your internet. You need to have that tool. But the remote support tool also has gained that importance, and we've seen that adoption of that almost 200% more than what it used to be. So now, given this background, right, there are a couple of things that what we see should be the new way of looking at remote support, right? A couple of things, like for example, earlier probably remote support tool was used very sparingly, just to sort of do a troubleshoot, just identify what's the issue, maximum take a remote control of the system. But today that is just not the only issue, right? The first thing is that because people have started using laptops, in some cases people have used their own home PCs, etc. Then you have tablets, you have mobile phones, which is used so extensively. Your remote support tool should be able to support these devices. That is one thing, right? End user machines are different now. It's not a desktop anymore. It's gone beyond that. So the remote support tool has to sort of support that change. The second thing is the unattended access, right? Earlier, what used to happen is a remote support, when there is a remote session, the end user is supposed to, or is sort of mandated to sit in the front of the machine. But obviously nowadays that's not going to be possible, right? Probably an employee wants to take a lunch break, and then you want your technician to sort of perform tasks around that time when the employees are not, or the end user is not there in the machine. So that becomes a critical factor. Does your remote support tool have an unattended access? Then the other thing, right, because I said that most of the employees want hybrid and remote working, etc. The number of tickets also, what we see, have gone high, right, with your service desk or with your internal help desk. Hence, your remote support tool should have the capability of having multiple session handling capability. So at the same time, simultaneously, which we've seen, this is another thing that we have seen, that the meeting tools were used during the pandemic for remoting in, right? But meeting tools has limitations. You cannot have parallel sessions, you cannot have multiple sessions. But that we've seen is extremely critical now, because almost 50% of your workforce is working remotely. So to support the high ticket, in incoming tickets. Then the other bit is integration, right? Because you need systems to seamlessly talk to each other. So does your remote support tool integrate with whatever ITSM tools that you have currently? Does it integrate with your CRM tools? Those kind of stuff that needs to be seen, right? Because you need to have that seamless day-to-day workflow in place. And then finally, this is another important thing that we have seen that's come up, is the collaboration. When I say collaboration, you have your L1, L2, right? How easily are the L1 technicians are able to collaborate with your L2? Or what we have seen gone up in the pandemic is that there have been a lot of hardware issues, right? So now your technicians may not be technically sound to support the hardware issue. So in that case, what happens? You may have a Lenovo or a Dell laptop. You need to get the Lenovo or a Dell technician in the same session. So your remote support tool should be able to enable that as well. So these are some of the things that we have seen changed, which probably is because of COVID.
Right, right, absolutely. I think, thank you, in fact, Triveni, for putting across, some of the key areas for evaluating remote support. So basically, Satish, one is, to have the right, functionalities and features covered in the solution, right? And the other is to meet the ROI standards. So, what are the parameters that you consider? What are your driving forces when it comes to achieving an optimal ROI out of the solution?
Right. I think first and most important is use the tool optimally, right? Many times I've seen uh, any tool that you buy, uh, you hardly use about 15 to 20% of its features. Let's pick up the mobile phones that we use. So it has so much of features inbuilt, but we hardly use them. WhatsApp, calls, messages. Message is again for OTP alone, right? And then YouTube videos. But
Right,
you have got lots and lots. So that's where I normally drive my team to start looking at what are the different features available. And that exactly is where your ROI is inbuilt. Because the standard features that you use is required for you to really run the business. You don't really get an ROI from there. But the add-on features that you get is where you need to really focus on. You should have your processes built around that so that you really gain better return on investment. Maybe I can give you a small example. Like you would probably use a lot of asset management tools, right? Maybe let's talk about some software asset management tool that gives you a software inventory. You get the software inventory, but what do you do with that? For example, you would be let's say you get the list of different applications for lack of a better term. Let's say one application called Coral Draw. You use them, right? And typically in many businesses, or especially in ITES type of businesses, you'll have small projects, fixed time projects that come in. You procure the tools for that particular project, deliver the project, and you move on to the next project. So the tools that you buy for that particular project would be left as is. And there may be some other team from a different
right,
division who would want to buy the same tools. And since it, from the project costing perspective, it really, you do your budgeting that you need to buy these licenses, and then you just go and buy the licenses for that project again, utilize them,
right,
and move on. So you have lot of applications that really remain unused, and that's what I said. Like you need to optimally use tools. Like once you have the list of applications, check are they all being used? How many applications that are really lying unused? Can you get them back to the common pool and utilize them somewhere else, right? So those I don't really see that's really happening in many organizations. Slowly, I can see
correct,
a lot of tools are offering that features too. I mean, if
right,
any application is unused for, let's say, for 3 months, you just go and get them back to your common pool and allocate that when there's a request from any other business. So that's one example of an optimal utilization of tool because a software asset management tool, it gives you the list of software that you have, but how do you really go beyond and make utilize and
right,
utilize the software to our advantage, right? It may not really savings, but it will give you cost avoidance. You would not buy anything more. So that's I mean primarily that's what I focus on my team also. Don't look at only what you buy the tool for because that meets the current objective, but if you need to really get up. Am I still on the call? Okay, sorry,
yeah, yeah,
something
yeah. You
popped
can
up.
hear me.
Right. So yeah, so that's the focus, Khushbu and Triveni. So we need to really see
Got it.
what are the other features that the tool has got to offer and go for it. That's when you get your bang for the buck.
Right, right. Great. Triveni, your thoughts on the same? I think we've
Yeah,
seen a lot of organization facing challenges,
yeah,
especially outsourcing and offshoring space. So your thoughts
right.
on Satish
Yeah, I
points?
mean, I 100%, agree to what, yeah, sorry. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I'm not sure about Satish.
Satish, now can you hear me?
He's there.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay. Can you hear
perfect.
me now? Yeah. Okay. So I was saying that I completely 100% agree with Satish, right? So one of the biggest issues with any kind of software, or app or tool is adoption, right? And that's the biggest nightmare for the IT leaders like Satish today, right? And we see that even in our tools, right? We Adoption is something that we track very closely. So what we have done internally is that we have customer success managers, which I'm sure most of the company, most of the larger software organizations do have. But something that we do a little uniquely, right, is that we are pretty transparent, right? Because somebody at Satish's level will may not have the time to look at how many licenses are utilized, how many are unutilized, what features are utilized. That becomes a little bit of a challenge, right? So what we do is, we sort of set up about, like, say, if not every month, at least once in a quarter, review with the customers. And in this review, what we showcase is how many licenses have been utilized and how many have been idle, how many sessions were, like, for example, if I have to take remote support, how many sessions were done in the month. And we also highlight if the sessions are going down, right? Obviously that will boomerang on us, but we still do it because it is important for Satish to know. Because what we've seen in the pandemic, right, people became lazy to use these technical tools and they started using more of meeting tools for remote support. And what happens in meeting tools is it does not have an audit trail. So tomorrow when there are audits, you don't know, right? The technician may have accessed a power user's system. And since specifically since organizations like Satish work with highly regulated environment like healthcare or BFSI, those kind of stuff becomes very confidential, right? So where are the audit trails? So what we consciously decided is that we'll show an usage data irrespective of is there a spike or is there a reduction in it. And also, in terms of features, what features are used and what features are not used. Now if we sort of realize that the features which are not being used is actually critical and the reason why the software was bought at the first place, then we look at doing change management, etc., right? So something that we consciously do it, and our CSMs are very much involved in this because one of their KRAs is to monitor the usage, right? The moment there is a dip, etc., to inform the leadership in the customer end. So that is something that we also sort of
Right.
are aware of, right? And because we also use lot of applications internally, so that's something that we see that adoption is can become a challenge.
Right, right, absolutely. Great. I think this has been a great conversation with you, Satish and Triveni. And thank you so much for taking out time and joining us on this episode. Good takeaways for the viewers. I look forward to having many more interactions. Thank you.
Thanks a
Thank you,
lot.
Khushbu. Thanks, Triveni.
Thanks, Satish. Thanks, Khushbu. Great interacting. Thank you.